statistical modeling of spatial temporal patterns of wet and dry conditions at a local scale in Uganda. It has been supervised by Professor Moses Musinguzi, who is here in attendance, and Dr. Lydia Kalondo, and has been assisted by the powerful doctoral committee, including Professor David Kiza, Dr. Seth Goldman, and Dr. Ronald Echaimba. Very smart disciplinary. And today we are here to see it was presented over. And we are hoping for a great presentation to help us appreciate the work that has been put together. We have a discussant, Dr. Saul Daniel Dumba. Dr. Daniel, most welcome. He comes from our sister department of CEDAT, Geography, Geomatics, and Climatic Sciences. I hope I got the order right. Together with Dr. Daniel Waiso, of the same department, and online we have Dr. Alex Musima, our very own Dr. John Richard Otoge. These are the people who will engage the candidate and give us a verdict of the work. We have a very straightforward agenda and opening prayer. And I've already made my remarks. I'll introduce the candidate, the analyst. The candidate will make his presentation, and then the discussant will engage him. And then after that, the panelists will have the opportunity to interact with him. Then after that, we shall open to the public, and that will be followed by a time of discussion in the breakaway room. By special request of the candidate, Dr. Lydia, it is requested that you give the opening prayer. It is sure that your prayers reach faster than the rest of us. So please do the honors and give the opening prayer.
And my doctoral committee has Professor David Kiza, Dr. Seth Goldman, and Dr. Ronald Echaimba. Okay, so during the course of this presentation, we are going to have a background which has an introduction which has a background, we have a problem statement, we shall look at the significance, the work, the justification, conceptual framework, and then we'll get into the methods, results, and discussions for objective, as well as the conclusions and the recommendations. So we both experienced wet and dry conditions, whether experienced them as heavy downpours, or the floods, or the scorching heat, or for some of you farmers who experienced the drought, who experienced bounty harvest. And these vary in our country, and so it has called the attention of researchers to understand where they vary, and therefore need to model them location accuracy at a local scale. There is a challenge, however, of tools, methods, and the data that is required in modeling these wet and dry conditions. And so, there has been reliance on globally scaled models. But we know that the decisions we take to deal with the impacts of climate change, such as irrigation, mechanizations, are actually taken at a local scale. And so, we still remain with the need to model over space and time at a local scale. When we talk about space and time in this research, we conceptualize it in computer language. And if we have a planar space where wet and dry conditions occur, we assume it's in X, Y, and Z. And then it will begin receiving rainfall. Over the years, some places receive a lot of rainfall, some receive less rainfall, some receive, some do not receive rainfall. And this goes on year after year after year. And we experience an accumulative result eventually. And we need to understand what is happening at every locality. A locality has the variations that have happened over time. And in our analysis, we analyze it in respect to its neighbors. And these neighbors, in our science, is what we call spatial neighbors. And this forms the data structure of our analysis, which is stored in a multidimensional array. And we use geostatistics to interrogate it, which is a class of statistics that helps us analyze values that are spatially correlated or close to each other. And when we talk about analyzing it at a local scale, by local scale we mean a spatial unit of analysis that is reflective of the smallest administrative unit in the study area and adapt to modeling wet and dry conditions. So these wet and dry conditions that we are talking about in the context of this research refer to the surplus and deficit of precipitation. And we've used the standard precipitation index in the study to understand it. It's an index that is acknowledged by the World Meteorological Authority, and as values tend towards the greater positive, then we are tending towards extreme wetness, and as we tend towards the negative values, then we are tending towards extreme dryness. But why are we taking this study? Why am I taking this study? This study comes from my childhood inspiration. I grew up from a village that did not have sufficient water, and so we relied on rainwater harvest. And so when it did not rain, we did have a duty to actually fetch the water. And so what happened is, as young children, we discovered those who lived in the 90s, you can remember that at the end of the news forecast, at the end of the news bulletin, there was a weather forecast. So we used that forecast to tell when it will rain and when it will not rain, so that we don't have to fetch water. So until this unfortunate day when it rained and stopped only a few meters away from my home. And then I did not fetch water, and I had to suffer the consequences. That imprint remained with me until I joined the student body of Geomatics and discovered that the study pursued location precision. This precision made me question myself why we had not grabbed it to understanding conditions of weather, conditions of wet that are wet and dry. And that led me to my problem statement. Sorry, technology is keeping me busy.
Can you share your screen afresh? Thank you.
Okay. So that led me to my problem statement. That there is a deficiency in the modeling of the spatial temporal patterns of wet and dry conditions at a local scale. And this has been an impediment in implementing climate change adaptation and mitigation measures at a local scale. This deficiency comes from the lack of localized climate data that is consistent over a long period of 30 years, and also that the data lacks spatial completeness, as well as the inadequacy of the methods that are available for modeling and the lack of spatially suitable prediction algorithms. So what this has caused is post-extreme planning, misaligned policies, difficulty in implementing emerging concepts such as climate insurance and climate proofing. And so the objectives of this research, main objectives to create a geostatistically oriented approach for modeling the spatial temporal patterns of wet and dry conditions at a local scale in Uganda. And the specifics are to assess the use of satellite graded data sets for modeling precipitation-based wet and dry conditions at a local scale in Uganda, and then to model the spatial temporal patterns of wet and dry conditions with input from satellite graded data sets, as well as to determine the optimal geostatistical modeling and forecast algorithm at a local scale with input from satellite graded data sets. And finally, is to determine the optimal scale at which spatial modeling of wet and dry conditions can be performed using satellite graded data sets. And then why is this research significant? This research, upon completion, provides an empirical geostatistical approach that helps us reduce this geographical ambiguity of where wet and dry conditions occur or where they are forecast to occur, and it contributes to development of meaningful adaptation and mitigation policies, programs, plans that are location specific. As you can see with the IPCC ARS6 report, this is what we have for our country, and this is the indication that we are actually due for heavy precipitation and heat-related conditions. However, we know that this can be broken down to discuss the detail of our country. In terms of justification, this research is indeed in line with the aggregate targets of the SDG 13, the Vision 2040, the Paris Agreement, and the recent Climate Change Act of Uganda, that all verge for communication of locally determined climate representations, contributions, and impacts. And also, they also advocate for development of policies and organizational structures that strengthen coordination systems at local scale and building capacity for local governance in terms of disaster management strategies. Conceptually, the main issue that is being analyzed here, the main variable, is the precipitation-based wet and dry conditions that are affected by the spatial scale and the temporal scale. Being precipitation details, there are intermediates that affect it. There are oceanic drivers, there are like the ITCZ, the Indian Ocean Dipole, then the atmospheric drivers like the ITCZ, and then we have the terrestrial drivers like Lake Victoria. I believe that by using the spatial metrics, I'll be able to ascertain that satellite graded data sets provide an alternative data set and they're dependable, and by using the space-time cube, I'll be able to do the geostatistical analysis to develop the modeling. So this leads us into the methods, results, and discussions for objective. For objective 1, this was the methodology, and it largely involved attaining satellite graded data, of which through literature we analyzed that the CHAPS data set was sufficient to do the modeling. And then we also got institute data from UNMA, which is the Uganda National Meteorological Authority, the principal body responsible for weather data. And so we got this and did interpolate it in order to be able to compare the surfaces at different distance intervals. For example, the 5-kilometer interval, the 10-kilometer interval, and the 20-kilometer interval. In this, we used spatial metrics of R squared, of the Nash Sutcliffe efficiency coefficient, the p-bias, and the root mean square. The root mean square error observation standard deviation ratio, which is best abbreviated as RSR. So the R squared gives us the variancy, the NSE gives us how predictable one model is with the other, and the bias correction tells us the deviance in terms of if it underestimates or overestimates, and the R squared tells us, so the RSR tells us about the degree of approximation. Now the best value of R squared and NSE is 1, and the best value of the p-bias and the RSR is 0. As you can see, at 5 kilometer radius, we were able to ascertain that we had best values for all the metrics, but these values went on reducing as we increased the distance, an indication that at small distances, where the graded data sets are performed equally with the in-situ surface. And so the graded data set was making a good representations at such small scales that are interpreted as local. This is in line with observations by J. Ajes, who indicated that the actual optimal radius for an in-situ measurement of weather is actually 5 kilometers. We then went to objective 2, which was divided into 3 sets. One set was the data analysis for input, and then the spatial modeling, and then the temporal analysis. The temporal analysis is composed of trend analysis and change point analysis. During the data input, we obtained the graded data sets, and we were able to split them into the seasons of precipitation in Uganda, that's the deficit seasons and the surplus seasons. And then we changed this into a data cube, space-time cube, which we interpreted at the beginning. And in terms of spatial modeling, we used the JETS odd local statistic to obtain the intensity of clustering and the significance of clustering. False positives were eliminated using the FDR corrections, and then the detail was pushed to trend analysis. And this trend analysis, we used the man-Kindle trend analysis, and then for the change point analysis, we used the pruned exact linear time algorithm, which is a dynamic algorithm to tell where change points occur. These were then compared per season and validated. Whereas we did all seasons, this presentation sticks to just the season of SON for presentation time purposes. So in the output model showed us that we did have precipitation increments or tendency towards wetness in the area from Kotido area down to Bugisu through to Lake Victoria Basin. This part is getting wetter and the central is getting wetter, and this is similar to analysis that has been done by Majaliwa et al. That these areas actually experienced their peak during the October season. Chombo et al. 2020 also observed that this is part of the Lake Kyoga Basin, a basin that has been analyzed and found to have extreme wetness occurrences occurring post 2000. And then if you look closely, you can tell pockets of wetness within the northern region. This is an occurrence that has also been observed, because whereas the north experiences its wet season from March to October, most of its rainfall comes in between August and October, and it is said to be increasing. Then we can see that we had a downward trend right here around the areas of Gomba and Simbabwe and Mubende. This is an observation that has been made by Nisima in 2021, who observed drought-like conditions in this area. And then Muganga in 2019 also observed that farmers, smallholder farmers in this area, complained of low yield upon planting within the SON season. This model is data-driven, and it's able to give data per grid or per cell, and so it's dynamic in nature. Any given cell will give you the derived data below it, and that's what makes it even more local. Okay, so then we got the change points as well, and during the change point analysis, we were able to understand that we have them as sporadic throughout the country. This is by the nature what they call complexity of climate systems. For us, in this observation, we note that around the mountainous regions of Rwenzori and the Elgon area, we have a number of change points there being experienced by several localities. It is little wonder that Sentongo in 2008 observed that during his study in the Mpindi Penetrable Forest, that the species there, some were dying out due to changes in the amount of rainfall that they received. And Chisembe in 2019 followed up on research in that same region and noted that these sporadic changes were largely due to the sizable inland water body as well as the topography. Being the topography, we have mountain Rwenzori here and we have mountain Elgon here, and we can arguably state that orographic rainfall contributes to changes here that are micro and cannot be indicated throughout the country. So different areas experience a different climate, and it can only be detected when done at a local scale. A change point then is noted to have an area where the main changes as indicated in this graph. So when an area is having many change points, then it calls for investigation of what happens there, but there are several and they are sporadic. To give you an actual picture of what I mean by global and local, these are global models. This is a study by Suruga et al. In 2019, and this is a study by Nimsima in 2023. You can tell that the study communicates wetness and communicates dryness through cold cumulative wet days and cumulative cold days. And then this is what we get. But you imagine if you're dealing with a district like Nakaseke, you may not be able to extract that detail from these maps. This being data driven, you are actually able to pick up particular point and be able to extract values or data details of that particular trend with a degree of confidence, knowing that to a 99% confidence, 95% confidence, or a 90% confidence, you're in an upward trend or a downward trend. This data was validated using UNIMA data and UNIMA experts. UNIMA experts were gathered in a workshop and asked to shade out areas which they thought were experiencing trends, upward trends of rainfall, as well as downward trends for MAM. And in my appreciation of their shading, it is indicative of the area that we have, but this could not be easily compared. And so we got UNIMA data, which also indicated the same. You can tell that the experts were aware of their work that is in the state of the art trend, and we compared them, and the R squared gave us 0.96. We then went to objective 3, which was to determine the optimal geostatistical algorithm. In this case, we subjected our space-time cube to 3 main algorithms, which is the forest-based forecast algorithm, a machine learning algorithm, the exponential smoothing algorithm, and the curve-fitting algorithms. These algorithms largely depend on the fitting of the model pattern. And then upon fitting the model patterns on the data, we subjected them to a forecast root mean square error analysis to determine how good the forecast curve compared to the data within the curve. But that does not determine the accuracy of the forecast. So we used the validation root mean square error, where we held part of the data and modeled with one part. We held 25% of data. That's 9 years of the 39 years used in this analysis. And we were able to attain the validation root mean square error. This was subjected to analysis using to validation using still the SPI generated from the grid for 2021 and 2022. These were compared and R-squared obtained to determine their validation. Results tell us that for the curve fitting, we have in the curve fitting algorithm that most areas around the Lake Victoria Basin, around this strip from Kotido down to the Bugisu region, were likely to experience extreme wetness. If you look at our histogram, you're able to tell that most areas are moderately wet. Now I can tell you that a wet condition during a wet season is normal climate until it's in the tails of the distribution, and that's why we are indicating it as areas that are likely to experience extreme wetness. The conditioning here of why we have linear, parabolic, and exponential trends largely depends on how data varies at that particular locality, and so the pattern and the direction matters. For example, if you're dealing with mean, it means the change is around the mean, and that's why the mean model will actually fit better than the parabolic model, which changes over time. Analysis was extended to the exponential smoothing algorithm, and for reaching its prediction gave us a similar occurrence, but this time with a lesser distribution from the Kotido area down to the Bugishu region, and we can see some parts around the Masaka region also indicating wetness. Whereas they all indicate wetness in the Lake Victoria Basin, the magnitude and spread is different, but majorly most of the areas are moderately wet. And we can tell from the fitting here, the exponential smoothing degrades with time, and its prediction is with close time, but for risk it gives us a 95% confidence band, which tells us that a value could largely fall within that range. This analysis was also extended to the forest-based algorithm, which is a machine learning algorithm, and the machine learning algorithm was able to tell us that, I think my slide moved a bit fast. So the machine learning algorithm was able to tell us that actually the spread is much more according to it, and the areas of Sembabule and Mubende are actually still having pockets that are experiencing drought-like conditions. Now this basically studies the model and predicts along the same variance. If you look at the lines of prediction, you can tell that it tries to mimic the flow of all the trend. Then we got the best validation root mean square error from all the models, and then combined just with those that gave us the best value, not the entire, not an independent model, but each that gave us a best value per locality. This analysis all takes place per locality, and methods are deployed per locality. Here we are still able to observe that from Kotido downwards to the Busia region, we are likely to experience an increase in wet and dry conditions, and this is by 2025. And then we also see that in this part of the Lake Victoria region, we are able to actually, we are likely to experience extreme conditions. If you look at the distribution here, we still have most areas experiencing wet conditions and some areas experiencing dry conditions. Now here, what happens by bringing all these models and combining them, you can be able to tell which algorithm performed best. This observation is not deviant from what Ogwang et al. Observed in 2016, that we are likely to have an increase from the Kenya-Uganda border side down to the Lake Victoria Basin up to 2100. And Nandozi et al. In 2012 made similar observation that increments of rainfall in the zone will largely be around the eastern part of the country and the Lake Victoria Basin. So using the proposition by Zeng et al. Of 2024, that the conditional performance of algorithms actually establishes the spatial suitability, then we can tell from this modeling that indeed areas are suitable by nature of their variability. For example, if you can tell from the Lake Victoria Basin, the nature of variability there was fitting to the parabolic. And so the algorithm states that the best algorithm to use in these regions is the parabolic. Now there has been instances where one algorithm is used for modeling throughout the entire data set. However, this changes, and if it's not tamed, then it can give us different results. That's why we are able to see that in some areas random forest works best, in the others parabolic works best, but it's all dependent on the nature of variability, and so we are able to establish which algorithms work best for prediction, so that I do not have to fetch water. So this was validated both at exact values and inexact values within the 95% confidence interval. So in the, and we used a number of points around the country by random sampling regions of about 50-kilometer radius to be able to obtain a comparison. So we got R squared, and they had low values at the exact point, but they had high values within the 95% range. That took us to our objective 4, our last objective, which was to determine the optimal scale. Now, scale is sensitive to particular parameters. That is the scale effect and the zoning effect. That means the finer the scale gets, the more likely you're going to get a different result. And the more the area changes in terms of shape, that's the zone effect, then you're likely to also get a different result. And so we developed 2 sets of simulation experiments to deal with that. Now we used the skillful nuggets seal ratio to determine the optimal scale. The nugget represents the variability of small distances that is often due to small errors which usually result from measurement, and that represents the intracell variance. The seal represents the maximum variability over larger distances and is largely due to macro scale errors, and that represents the intercell. Now when we have a low or a small nugget seal ratio, then it means that the intracell variance accounts for a very small percentage of the total variance, and thus can be considered as the optimal scale. So in this skillful modeling, we selected 5 cities within Uganda, the most populated by 2020 using UBOS data, and modeled them using the nugget seal ratio. We did break down using bilinear interpolation the scale down to 0.0 degrees. Here, I take you to the curious case of Mbarara. As the neighborhood cells increase, interpretation becomes much better. So we can see that at 0.01, we have a dry condition that turns into an extreme condition and then turns into a wet condition in the 0.05 degrees. That means the more we vary the cell size, the more we are likely to experience a different condition by modeling. So what the model gives you may not necessarily be the right thing. So this was done throughout several districts in order to obtain the optimal scale, and every district gave us an optimal scale which ranged from 0.01 to 0.03 degrees. So we did eliminate the bounding box. We did eliminate the actual shape and used the bounding box or the aerial box, which was at 0.5 degrees. This aerial box was able to tell us that yes, this condition does not go away. If it is wet, it is wet. If it is dry, it is dry, and also varies with the intensity of the region. So when you determine your scale from the other side, you will not get a good representation, whereas a model is supposed to be scaled. But this gives us the actual representation of scale. and it was found to be a constant 0.2 in representation of the districts. Research had previously shown that the best value to use was 0.05 degrees through literature review, but if this work is to continue and be broken down to lower administrative areas, then we needed to redefine the scale. And that brings me to the conclusions. For objective 1, we can conclude that CHAPS satellite graded datasets make an accurate representation of in-situ precipitation data required in modeling wet and dry conditions based on the best values we got of R squared, NSE, P-bias, and RSR. For objective 2, we can conclude that the geostatistical model can greatly account for trends at a local scale based on confidence towards wetness and dryness. And for objective 3, with confidence, you can conclude that geostatistical models are actually able to forecast wet and dry conditions at a local scale. However, they are not spatially exact and may not work at exact points. For objective 4, we can conclude that the 0.5 is optimal for coverage of the entire country when you're doing local scale analysis. However, if analysis is to be done at lower levels, like the district level, then we need the 0.02 degree scale to carry out analysis of wet and dry conditions. Recommendations. The study recommends the adoption and use of precipitation satellite graded datasets like CHAPS in localized modeling of wet and dry conditions, since we originally have an absence, a deficit of in-situ datasets that cannot provide general coverage. Then in coverages at district level, bias correction has to be applied because some districts can cause bias over the satellite graded datasets. And so it has to be assessed before it is used. In objective 2, the adoption of the geostatistical modeling approach is recommended, the approach that was shown in objective 2. And if this approach is used, then we can be able to make decisions that are data-driven. Take an example of MAIF, the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industries and Fisheries. If this data was to be used, they can determine if, for example, beekeeping will still be suitable in a particular area if it is getting wetter, by realizing that bees actually depend on the plant cycle. Then you can know that other plants here won't be able to sustain beekeeping, and you can make that decision at a lower scale, which accounts for concepts like precision agriculture. The adoption and use of multi-scale algorithms that are variability dependent is recommended to improve the forecast accuracy. And if the forecast accuracy is improved, then we can project it, for example, on major crops in the country to support small-scale initiatives at a local scale. This way, small-scale farmers will be able to avoid issues like low crop yield because the prediction applies to them. Then there is adoption of the 0.02 optimal scale for district coverage, which is recommended, and 0.05 degrees for national coverage. Organizations like UNIMA, if they adopt this scale and integrate it into what we call geofences, the same way you visit a country and get adverts for that country, if this is incorporated in geofences, if you visit an area, then you should get climate detail of that particular area that you're visiting. This will improve climate literacy, and that means people are able to understand concepts like crop insurance, climate insurance, and climate proofing way ahead of time. For academia, scale presents a complex representation, and we therefore have further areas of research in multi-scale models and multi-source models. ball mount sensor models. So what's the actual contribution of this research? This research has made 2 publications that are available for the body of knowledge to consume. And in terms of rainfall validation, it has quantified and validated the CHAPS gradient dataset as an alternative precipitation estimate that can be used for local scale modeling. And in terms of geostatistical modeling approach, the space-time cube location-based model will be a good one for evaluating wet and dry conditions at a local scale. Then geostatistical forecast algorithm suitability. Now with small areas, you're able to tell which algorithm works best at predicting within that area, given the variability that has been indicated. In terms of what scale is optimal when doing this analysis, established that yes, the 0.05 degree scale holds for national coverage and the 0.02 degrees holds for district coverage. I acknowledge the Makerere University Staff Development and Welfare Retirement Benefits Committee that has paid the tuition for this research, my supervisors, Professor Moses and Dr. Lydia Mazikayondo, my doctoral committee, Associate Professor David Mukiza, Dr. Saif Mugume, and Dr. Ronald Chalimpa. I also appreciate my colleagues at the Department of Geomatics and Land Management who have sustained me through talks and walks of life to be able to accomplish this. I also want to acknowledge the CHAPS team, which is led by Chris and Peterson, for providing this data, as well as the climate change unit of Uganda that also helped in the workshops to validate this data, as well as the UNIMA team. I also appreciate the EZRI team that worked with me in making sure that the platform was able to actually hold my work. I also thank my wife and children in absentia, and I also thank God and all of you who have taken time to be part of this. Thank you for your attention and your kind words.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think it deserves a more and it's okay if you didn't understand the order of it. Yeah. Could I kindly request you to turn on this video? Yeah. So colleagues, that is the first session of this presentation, and to help us hopefully understand the presentation a lot better, we have our discussants. In other places, they're going the operator and some of the bit aggressive, but it's using more friendly term as discussant. Yeah, so Daniel, we'd like to hand over to you to have an intellectual discourse with our students so that we check and be sure that all these work and articulate and defend it. So, David, I think you'll give the mic to me so that you can have a discussion with Ivan. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ivan. Ivan, for this introduction. You're free to call me Daniel. If you don't want, if you really want me to be happy, just call me Daniel. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And you know what? You're really talking about climate. Talking about climate, and you're using a tool which is very important for this kind of work. Your statistics to be able to make sense of the wet and the dry days and all day. So I want to thank you so much for that. And my understanding is that, you know, the general problem, you have a specific problem, but the general problem in the country is that we do have data challenges, right? We do have data challenges and climate data. This will cut across probably several other sectors, but basic climate. And so we are always grappling with how do we begin with how can we have continuous analysis, right? And I think you may manage to say that, hey, look, they observe whether precipitation data maybe having missing records, but we do have other options. And that's where you go. I really appreciate you for that. So I wanted to first check in, just because I really had very few interactions with you. Clearly, make a clear statement. What's the difference between precipitation and rainfall? Just make that clear so that I know the person today.
Precipitation is a collective term to represent water, snow that falls from the atmosphere or that falls down to the earth's surface. The rainfall is precisely raindrops that we receive here. For this study, precipitation is used largely to represent what we get from satellite data sets, and rainfall is largely inclined to what we get from these two observations.
Okay. So you say that would it be right to say that what we are getting from giraffes is precipitation and not rainfall, and what we get from Uniman is actual rainfall? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, what I'm saying is that in precipitation, most of our precipitation here is rainfall.
So what is that you are using in giraffes? Is it precipitation or rainfall?
It is indicated as precipitation because it's a precipitation related data set, but in actual sense it has a high representation of rainfall. 9% above is rainfall in that.
Thank you, Ivan. We'll get back to that later. I just want to have this level ground so that you can make it objectively. So in this data, because I read what is the foundation here, the big data, climate data, and specifically rainfall, right? And could you remind me what's the period we're looking at? The period, the precipitation data from giraffes we're looking at?
We are looking at 1981 to 2020. This is what was used in modeling, and then part of validation uses 2021 to 2020.
So the validation is clear. So that's quite substantive because you're looking at maybe 40 years, right? You're so generous because even 30 years would be okay for this kind of work. So just again to be sure, we're talking about two scales. We're looking at spatial scales, and temporal scales, right? So the spatial scale looks to be okay. Checking later in methodology, but for the temporal scale, what scale are you using? So what scale are you using for the temporal? So I know, for example, you have this 40-year period, okay? So I'm looking for things like, are you looking at, when you look at all your analysis, are you really looking at the annual scale, so that you'll be able to your trends from that? Are you looking at monthly, seasonal, daily? Which scale are you using?
I'm using monthly, but representing every year. At the end of the day, I have seasons, and these seasons belong to, for example, if you have September, October, November, they will be new to hire.
So those trains, train graphs,
Yes.
okay, so they are. So is that really monthly, seasonal, or your
Season.
annual? Annual data.
It's season per year.
Okay. So every point we see is for a year, for example, for the zone. That's very important to also appreciate. Okay. So I wanted to take you through to let's go a little bit to chapter 1. I like the way you organize the chapter. Quite interesting. I made some few observations that I would like you to take. One of the interesting things is that I actually realized if you by any time, you have the tools, right?
Yes.
This one again is on the right note. On page 1 of this book, you have a full page as a paragraph. What's that? Why did you? And the things presented there are so cool that you could not get them in paragraphs. So you have literally a full page as a paragraph, and then later the subsequent pages at least try to make some real paragraph. So would you call that a paragraph? Or what was going on behind? No pressure, no nothing, but it's kind of.
I think that's an oversight, so you can correct it.
Okay. All right. So, again, just before we go, I thank you so much for the picture of that little boy. I think it was little Ivan, right? Where he trained on the neighboring village, and he didn't make it to a place. So you have to go and fetch water, isn't it? Quite interesting. So, I like that pictorial that you presented. It's quite fascinating. So, I know presentation here, we actually tell you frankly, so that we go on to the next of our discussion. Rainfall is actually a precipitation. So it has nothing to do with what type of data set. It's precipitation. It's rainfall, especially that one which falls as water. Then the temperate places will be maybe snow or hail, so many other forms. So, for this precipitation, or for the rainfall in this village, it's kind of interesting because you're trying to go deep to really see that we have this rainfall, and so what is maybe the spatial distribution or spatial temporal wet and dry conditions. Okay? So, I just wanted again to check this. The precipitation we get in Uganda, your study area, is caused by many factors. We do have synoptic or like scale factors, and then the small scale. So quickly tell us as the audience, what really drives Uganda's rainfall?
Uganda's rainfall is driven by a number of factors which I can categorize in 3 phases. We have what we call the oceanic drivers, and these include the isophenomena, and most of us want to usually say this is a La Nina season, this is an El Nino season, and that deals with the warming of the ocean. And then the sea surface temperature, we have the Indian Ocean dipole, and those are the large water bodies around us. And then we have atmospheric factors like the intertropical convergence zone that actually moves. It's a wind that moves air masses that carry water or water vapor that may be cold, that may be warm vapor or may be cold, and they are responsible for the rainfall. For example, if the ice is moving south, that's usually the September-October season, we experience that season of rainfall, and it's likely responsible for that. But then Uganda being Uganda, we have other influences like mountains and water bodies, and those are called terrestrial factors. So there are factors that result out of the topography that we have, and that's why you see Lake Victoria Basin, for example, has an above normal rainfall. Experiences an above normal rainfall, but then we have other land masses, for example, Mandela Forest, we have the Congo forests, all contributing to our rainfall. Because the people in the mountain areas also experience what we call orographic rainfall. So those are actually the drivers of our rainfall.
Okay. And what do you think would have caused rain to fall in the next village and you never made it to your village?
I think it can be a topographic factor. I'm not really inclined to a causal element.
But it's like if you don't mind, just use your study. What you're looking at, study so local scale, scale. So what would have gone wrong? Was you guys in your village, you don't pray to God or the science?
Yes, of course as a child that would be an interpretation, but also that we were used that when they announced that Mukono is getting rainfall, we get. We did not at that stage appreciate that rainfall does not follow administrative boundaries, which is a representation we always got as children. And then eventually, growing up, you realize that rainfall has its own spatial pattern of distribution that has to be investigated independent of the boundaries. So that distribution, what caused the rainfall not to flow on our side, at that level of interpretation, and the interpretation of my research is it is not reported to that detail of my village. Yes.
Absolutely. So where does rainfall come from? Because you see, we have realists who of course they know rainfall. See, when they are praying, they look in the sky. When they're communicating with God, probably everything is up there. We know in our science, we know something different. But also rain also falls from there. I mean, it usually falls. So where does really rain come from? It's very grandma. Because you see, once we know that, then we can go and look at your wet and dry. Where does rain come from? Look at the factors, but okay, so much.
Rainfall formation has a cycle, and there are different factors push the cycle differently. If you look at, for example, a mountainous area, wind is going to carry this cloud of rainfall, and then when it raises up as water vapor and it's a warm cloud, when it cools, it will come down as rainfall. That's the same experience we get with our oceanics. When they push water inside and it's warm and it cools, then we get rainfall. However, how they push it does not rely on our boundaries. Yes.
Who pushes that?
It's the wind, the atmospheric factors that the wind raises above the mountain, raises with the water vapor, and then it comes down.
So the temperature, does the temperature very low?
Yes, because you have those that are warm, you have warm vapor going up, cooling down. So yes, temperature has a role. Because if you look at sea surface temperature, then the sea heats up, and then you get the vapors.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. Thank you. That's good to know. I would like to draw your attention to page 10, which is the conceptual model or conceptual framework we studied. And for starters, when I look at the conceptual model, everything I read there, before I even worry about it there before, everything I read there, most likely you study your analysis and everything, you must have really looked at it. You agree or you don't?
To a certain extent.
You're free to disagree.
Yes, to a certain extent it should have, especially the dependent and the independent variables.
Okay. Yeah, because first and foremost I saw you had, I appreciate the fact that you had the dependent, the intermediate, and then the dependent, and then here you show some outcomes. But in the intermediate variables, you show interesting things like ENSO, ITCZ, IOD. Do you, by any chance, whether it is at the methodology level or results or discussion or conclusion or recommendations, do you ever say anything about the ITCZ, the ENSO, and IOD? Why did you have this here?
I do not say anything about them. I, however, acknowledge them as contributors to the precipitation we get. And so when I'm dealing with a precipitation dataset, I believe their contribution is integrated therein. And the study remains concentrated with spatial scale and the temporal scale, and the others are simply acknowledged as contributors.
Yeah, because when I look at your studies, on the side of the dependent variables, you have things like your static related data, your statistical parameters, like the variables you're putting together, your temporal factors, which are on your mass scale and temporal scale, and then maybe things like spatial factors, like geographic location, things like that. And technically, because of the nature of your study, your intermediate variables would not likely be those, because these are just factors which bring about range. You will have things like maybe data quality and processing, or local evaluations, environmental factors, etc. And then your statistical computation methods. Then of course now on the dependent variables where you have the precipitation-based weight and dry conditions, that's right. You have that, and then maybe you have other things like accuracy measures and forecasting metrics. So there is, I think one of the substantive work that I think you really need to release. Everything going forward is okay, but you see once you pull off the conceptual framework not clearly, then you start struggling to even discuss and be able to put the desired image into the real work. Especially like, for example, for objective 3 and 4, where you get published, I think you might want, this might really help you to reconstruct your work much better. Yeah, because you're not doing anything about ITCZ or ENSO, so I thought that was quite interesting. So in the justification, did you intentionally leave out? You talk about the Uganda vision. That's a page 11, if you like. Uganda vision, and then the Climate Change Act. Okay, actually it is there. I think I don't see it. I see the NDP because I was curious just to see that. Currently, I think when you are revisiting this, you make some of these small changes. Just reduce on the size of the paragraphs. It's amazing. You have a full page, and it keeps on coming back in the literature review. So another thing I wanted to be clear on before we transition is you talk about wet and dry conditions. And in your literature review, likewise you did it here, you showed a table showing different categories from extreme wet, moderate, very, then of course the side of the dry. So and this is based on the Darium 2012. So for your study, what does wet mean and what does dry mean? Because I think that did seem to come out. You reviewed the literature. I expected that you would reinforce that in your methodology to clearly tell us that, hey, we are going for this. So, because your title is just wet and dry. These are not wet and dry. They have they are sort of qualified, extremely, severely, moderately, mildly. So for you, for this study, what does wet and dry mean?
In general, my research looks at wet as presence of precipitation to different degrees, and yes, it follows the SPI variation, and the dry as the deficit of precipitation. However, because my study is dealing with several years, cumulatively, it looks at it in terms of trend. And so our understanding is, are we getting wetter, are we getting dry? So the degree that is broken down on the point now is to the extent that this year you may experience wet, next year you may experience very wet, and then I would say that you're getting wetter.
Right, yeah, so I mean, what's the standard? What's the standard? So just imagine, you can make for us something like hypothetical, you are free to use whatever results in your one. So again, for Kampala or for Guru, I have this trend, right? From 1980 up to 2020, 2021. And so I have that. So how do you, at what point do you say that this place is getting drier or this place is getting wetter? Relative to what? Because you see issues of seasonality that also come into place. So how do you, what do you base on? Because you have your definitions here.
Okay, so let's consider a season like summer, September, October, November. So I get the SPI values of sun for the different years from 1981 to 2020. And then every year forms a time slice in my model, and every location or every cell denotes a location. So there's variability on a particular location as much as it can vary. So I use trend analysis. First I use the spatial analysis to determine where. Then I use the trend to determine the nature of time impact. And so I can tell that this place is getting wetter if its SPI values are increasing. When you get the Z, when I use the Z values and P values, I'm able to use the distribution table, and I'm able to tell the confidence with which it's going up. So I can tell that this particular locality is getting wetter, maybe to a 99% confidence, because I've done trend analysis and I've known the direction that it's going. The values are transiting from the negative values of the SPI that are wet or that are dry to maybe those are wet or they are originally wet and it's actually getting wetter.
Okay. Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Ivan. Because that's one of those concerns. So is that informed? Is that the way we're doing that? Is that informed by any literature, or you were just doing your thing? Is it really informed by any literature?
In terms of?
Yeah, I mean, your definitions, because you have, in your literature review, you have a clear, in the literature chapter, you have a clear description of what wet and dry is. But you never come back to that. You're simply saying this space is getting wetter, this space is getting, drier, things like that. So I think it would be really very important to connect that to what you reviewed. So now fast forward, let's move on to the methodology chapter. Although I know some of your answers will be informed by the literature review that you made. And for the methodology chapter, I'm really keenly interested in the data sets that you use. So you are using the data set you're using is actually charts, and you call it a trying to reach out for my notes. You call it a satellite driving data set. Is CHOPS really satellite? Would you call it a satellite driving data set or something else?
CHOPS is satellite derived, but it's assisted by station network.
Exactly. So it's really blended and Richardson, Stevenson, however, the guy, the owner of that data set, with CID, they really do a great deal in bringing satellite data with weather station data. So, and this has nothing to do with whether you are from a developing country like Uganda. They're running these algorithms, and basically what they're doing is they're getting satellite data and then blend it with weather station data that is available in Uganda. Let's be honest, you like local scale. So it's in Uganda. Okay? And so I have just one quick question for you. And I'm really moving forward, but I'll come back to data. But for that one, it's kind of exciting. Because you see, when you look at your results in chapter, objective, probably, in those objects where you do validation, the results are not surprising. Okay? Because if, for example, I have, let's get out of that. If I'm a farmer, and I'm growing rice, for you a farmer in Mukono, me I'm a farmer in Masaka. We are growing upland rice using different materials. Then, on the market, we want to get something better which can sell well, isn't it? So we happen to coordinate. And we say, oh, you know what, based on the future, the way the market trends are going to be, let us get our rice, your rice from Mukono, and my rice from where? From Masaka. Mix it up and have upland rice. We can call it hybrid rice. We think it will make a lot of money. And we put it on the market and it's making money. That's CHOPS. Okay? CHOPS is doing that. Now, when you go to friend comes like this gentleman here and says, wait a minute. We need to see how this special rice which is selling very well on the market, the blended rice, how it compares with the rice from Masaka. Okay? So the guy says, yeah. So he gets the blended rice and then he also gets the rice from my farm, from Masaka. And he does his analysis, like the way you do it. Do you really expect, would it be surprising? What kind of results do you think you will get?
I would expect you to quantify an error introduced by adding the other different rates.
It's quantified. Sure, it sounds like information.
It's quantified. I don't know if it's quantified for my country or for my place of study.
But we have so many study data using sure. So I would ask you actually that yes. If you don't know, you should know. You should not read.
I know that.
But what I'm interested in, don't move ahead of yourself. Let's not lose the audience. Okay, don't relax. Don't move ahead of yourself. I'm asking you, how would you think the blended rice would compare with my rice from Masaka or with your rice from Mukono? How would you, let's give you baby answer. Don't give a technical answer. I'm looking for, village answer. Village answer. What would you think?
I think if you got my rice from Mukono and your rice from Masaka and you mix them, and then person B comes and compares using my rice from Mukono with a blended, I think they should be able to tell a difference that was introduced by blending your rice into mine. For example, your rice that you blended into mine, assuming you all apply the same things, even pesticides or anything. Even near transporting, it may have added an error to your rice or to my rice. So that when we bring it together, I like how they communicate that this is, in my village answer, this is pure.
Yeah, I'm looking for village.
Yes.
I'm here to get your special answer. Yes, your expert answer is in the book. Yes. I'm looking for village answer and be general.
Yes, genuinely, I think you should be able to tell if you've shopped from China that this is class 1, this is class 2. This is class 2.
No, but how would they compare?
They would compare, they would look at it and say this one is, different. Something introduces a variable, a certain variable affects what you have.
They will be okay. For me, I'll tell you this, I don't guide me. I think my village answer would be this rice will be very similar. Because you see, the way it happens is, we are not mixing just for just. We are interested in selling rice and tell the customer that this is the best of the market. So even when we are mixing it, we don't leave any stone unturned. We mix it outside. So when we compare with the Masaka rice from corn rice, it will actually compare very well. You see, it's not surprising. No one is saying that. Your results, that's what I say. So it's not really surprising and it's not fun because it's not so exciting to me because especially if I'm a regulator like UNPS and you are telling people that you have this rice but also have this one. It's not true that they have 3 types of rice. We just have rice and one which has been mixed up. So that's what you do, and it's a little bit challenging because what you are comparing with has already been, and what you speak is as we speak. You see choices up to date as we speak. They are mixing. If we have used rice, it is continuous. As much as you just got your data set for up to 2020 and then you got this one 2021. The mixing is ongoing. You get? So, you can imagine. But that notwithstanding, I also made another observation, which is a question for you. Then we shall go into the statistics. But, why did you, okay, let me put it another way. If I wanted precipitation data, okay, for Uganda, yes, one of the ways is to get weather station data from UNIMA, which has its problems. Can you tell me a few more ways how I can get what other precipitation, where I can get precipitation data, besides the satellite, for example? Because that's not the only data set that is available. We can use, there are quite a many of them. Because from there, then you will answer the question why you went for the satellite data. Can you try it?
You want the history sources?
Yeah, I want, don't call them, don't grant them with anything. Me, I'm interested in sources where I can get precipitation data. And 2 of them we already know. Can be weather station data or satellite data. In this case, for you, we're using actually a blended one, but also satellite data. So I know of any other places where you have looked for this kind of study if you really wanted to get data and maybe make a case for whatever specific type of data set that you're using.
I know that there are surfaces which have been invoked that basically interpolate this data on the axis as a form of predate, which only rely on these 2 data sets that they are interpolated. And I know that there are satellites which are not blended and they exist on their own. And then in terms of these 2, I know that there are private entities that have their own
course, one which you don't, you talk about them, there's ones like the radar, the LiDAR, Doppler, but then we also have data from climate models. You talk about the global models. We also have regional climate models, which could be really very close to reality. But you see, the beauty is those data sets, for them, since they don't do the other counterfeit mixing, you can actually do the validation, isn't it? And then make your case. So I'm just curious, why didn't you, for example, go for regional climate data? From the models, from the regional models.
So regional climate models exist, but the actual basis of this work was bringing down analysis to a local scale. Again, going for a data set that provides regional would actually not.
No. So they are regional but very high spatial resolution. Yeah. Yes. 20 kilometers and they go down.
Yes, I also consider resolution. The CHAPS has a resolution of about 5 kilometers, and I know TAMSA has about 5 kilometers, and then the rest have more. Now, given that our analysis also has scale dependency, I needed the more lower the better. So if I want to argue that, because part of the analysis in geostatistics is the computational cost. So if you reduce the computational cost by going for a larger area, then you will still be involving methods that are limited in analysis at global scale.
Thank you very much. I think one of the reasons without looking at the computational cost, which you say, but in your literature, it would be very important to have clear reality, because you just, when you cover your work as preparing the literature review, you just go into satellite data sets. Like, why satellite? There's so many other data. There's even data that you can develop yourself using climate generators, and that one will be actually location specific at a point. So I think you need to strengthen that place just a little bit. So I think I'm ready now for the interesting science that you do. Ivan, the one interesting observation that I'm making is the maps. The maps you actually have beautiful maps, but they're very real. I mean, you can't really see anything, and that's really a big deal. I mean, it can be a beautiful map, but if I can't see anything, then it's useless. There is a map, for example, which I found very interesting. If you go to slide, I think it's a map in objective 2. Can you just back up a little bit and show you? There is a map which I think even in the way you're visualizing, so maybe let me explain it. So this map where you have the map of Uganda, and then you have lines which go to the trains and maybe actually spatial maps as well for the specific locations. Okay? So the map in Uganda is actually so big, and that's not what you want to show. You want to show actually how the locations look like. So technically, you just make that map as small as it can be, and just orient us. This train or this spatial map is actually, and then you enlarge those. Yeah, that's one of the things. And then the scales are really, really so bad. You can't read. I thought I would read the scales from your presentation, but it's the same. Technically, what you need to do is reconstruct the maps and then reconstruct the scales separately, enlarge the scale, and then put it back on the map so that whoever is seeing is able to follow. So I noted that you are using interesting geostatistics. In one of the most, I really really like the trend analysis statistics that you use to manipulate. But there are also other statistics that are, legitimate, that you could actually maybe use to be able to test, to run the trends that you ran. And so I'm just curious, as an expert now in these things, are you aware that there are other trend analysis methodologies? I didn't want to use the Mankind. First of all, why did you use the Mankind? But if I don't want to use the Mankind, I would use other statistics again, look at the trends. So, can you shed more light on that? What do you know? And why did you go for the Mankind?
Mankind is a non-parametric test for trend analysis, and you can use others. Largely, scholars in climate science have used the same as well to determine the trend. However, in power analysis studies and sensitivity studies, the Mankind has been able to perform better. It is more sensitive to outliers than the other outliers, and just saying. So I opted for it because of that, and also because other scholars have found the same in terms of power analysis.
Yeah, so I think still in your literature review, you need to explore all these different types, and then you make your case why you're going for the Mankind, because we have quite a bit of those besides the Mankind. Of course, you have the ordinary simplicities where you can use the linear regression, you can use the sales estimator, you can use the cumulative sum residues, auto-regressive, what we call the arimas, you can use the local weighted scatter plot and then do some smoothing, you can even do wavelet analysis, so, and all these things we have applications that are using them, so you really want to have that and make a case why you're really interested in the Mankind test. So you do have, I think that is objective to where you are doing validation, where you share your validation model on page 89. I have a question for you. I see here, of course, you are using 9 time steps. You are using 9 time steps, which accounts for about 25% of the total 39 time steps of a given location. And so, I'm just curious, why did you use those 9 time steps? And how different would the results be if, for example, I use different time steps, like maybe 13, 5, why 9? And what really caused that? Because I actually took note that I didn't see any reference. You need to bring back the references. So you do a great deal of referencing work in the literature review, and I really appreciate that. When you're talking about the methods, you need to make sure that you add that reference where it should be. But, so for the references, what about those data? But I mean, why 9? Why 25% of the 39 locations?
So we realized that I use 39 years in terms of analysis, and generous as it was, the 9 years still leaves me with 30 years to analyze and find. And also the 9% is the minimum requirement of our but I still remain with the 30 years that keep me in the level of analyzing and finding.
So here in the space-time cube, and thank you so much for the graph from the cube. I thought that was quite, revealing to show how the data cube really works. But you use here now a random forest voice forecast. I'm just curious, why did you use the forest-based forecasting as opposed to other methods like grading, support, vector integration, neural networks, then probably the GWR, geographical weighted regression, or maybe I don't know, why did you go for the random forest? What's the magic? Because even here, okay, so at least I see the reference random forest, but why not do your simple grading or these others? What is so special about random forest?
Okay, one, we are forecasting in this case to be able to tell the next surface we are getting, not move a value from one point and generate the data in one point. So I needed an algorithm.
The next surface. What do you mean by the next surface?
That I'm going to get a result. I'm not just getting results within the year 2020, but I'm looking forward to getting a surface that represents 2025.
Really?
Yes, these surfaces represent another year.
So wait a minute. So the surfaces will come back together. The surfaces you're making are for which years?
2025. The ones that I use, the forecast surface, like I mentioned, is for 2025.
Okay, so continue.
Yes, so I invoked values all for the years in between up to 2025. Here I predicted 2025. In due that by the time I present, that will be the next year. But here, also the main idea here is the space-time cube deals with data in large volumes. And I do not apply the methods generally. I apply them per location. So if I have 100,000 locations, then I have to run that algorithm 100,000 times. So what really guided most of these algorithms came down to how easy they are in terms of computation. So this forest-based algorithm was very pretty for the space-time cube because this is the computation. Yes.
Okay. So fast forward in the first objective where you're doing optimal spatial scale, because that's modeling of wet and dry conditions. You selected 5 cities, and then you said because these cities have the highest population. But why would you select highest population? How is like your wet and dry, stuff you are doing really connected to all of a sudden to population? Because even the data you're using has nothing to do with population. If you didn't want to use population, okay, so why did you use population? And two, if you didn't use population, what do you think would be the best way? The other population is best, okay, according to you. What would be the other second best way to select these cities? Because we're looking at wet and dry. Yeah.
So the occurrence of these impacts affects populations the most. It affects other factors like climate, like culture.
Did you put that in the picture?
That the population is the most affected.
Did you know the factors, for example?
Yes, I think there are some.
So what's the other way? What do you think would be the best way to inform your selection?
I would have gone by maybe size.
Size.
Or size, so which one is the biggest, but the analysis of this science makes sense when it's brought closer to people than objects that are really whether size, whether vegetation, and when it's brought closer.
How is, maybe the other way, how is wet and dry connected? Why is it? Why would you use population?
When let's let's consider the occurrence that I'm going to predict with a 99% confidence that Kampala is getting better. The people in that area, the numbers of the people in that area are the ones most impacted. So I do this research with a futuristic perspective that if I'm to drop this science and bring it to actual numbers of people that are likely to be affected in the event of an extreme event, I can be able to relate it to the population in that place. Also, these cities are largely new. No analysis has been done in these particular cities, and they have a lot of policies, interventions, plans, budgets serve people as an evaluation. So
now we've talked enough about this thing. Now we know what to study about. We are looking at weight and price, spatial, temporal, variation of that model. What do you think would be the other basis to select these places? Do you want me to tell you what I think?
I think what I should have thought is that maybe I would have looked at areas that have suffered most of this.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So I will go again to, because your work has nothing to do with population matters in Uganda, where people live. You see clearly from your data has nothing to do with population. The areas you are showing us, after some of those places are mountains, there's nobody there. Like when you show that side of the northeastern all the way up to the rural region, it's really like getting also really has nothing to do with population. But I think in the recommendation, I don't have time to do an analysis. This study, the selection of such places will actually be based on places which are experiencing flooding or droughts, so that you make a case and it is clear. And lo and behold, it will most likely still fall in some cities. So, yes, I see my time is fast spent, but there's one other. When it comes to still the fourth objective where you're fitting the variogram models and then calculating the NIC ratio, I noted that fitting variogram models here definitely has some limitations. There are other things we will do. Because our data here is being precipitation is non-stationary, right? By the way, when we are saying about non-stationarity, what does that mean? Yeah, data is like precipitation data or rainfall data is sort of having a non-stationary time of characteristics. What does it
does not necessarily have similarity, or it does not relate easily by location.
Right. So it's likely. So when you're saying that it's really likely, it's highly variable, but also it has that seasonality kind of thing. So it has that. So I think, Chair, I'm coming to the close, but there's somewhere where I'm really interested in checking Ivan. But yeah, so while you see the variogram models that you're fitting, the objective for, they do have limitations. They do have limitations. The NSR ratio that which we are using, things to do with, for example, and this is why I want you to make a case why you go for that. For example, the data we're talking about here, the SPI, this example for precipitation, and this is non-station. The data is actually non-stationary data. Okay, and one of the challenges is that variograms. Okay, so variograms have that they don't perform very well data like that, like the precipitation data with the SPI that you're making. And so I don't know Because the molecular models are shown that sort of like stationarity, first and foremost. That's one of the first assumptions they make with the assets, make it difficult to apply really, like for your dissertation. But in this case, you just do your value fitting and all that. But the data we're talking about is precipitation with a lot of non-stationarity. So, which means that if you do that, you're going to have a lot of biased estimates. So why did you go for the value-ground approach?
One, it's true that rainfall is not normally distributed, so that can represent non-stationarity. But SPI is, as standardized precipitation index. That means you have largely a normal distribution with high frequency points and tails and extremes. And so that qualifies it to be matched with the virus.
Yeah, if you remember your trends, remember those interesting things?
Yes.
That was SPI, isn't it?
Yes, that was SPI.
Yeah, so why do you...
If I put it in now the SPI that the virogram estimated was not done per location. It was done for the space in the time. That's why you see the array had an effect of 0.5 as well as the actual dimension of the districts. So it's not done per location. That entire area is standardized and so I can give you
Yeah, because you would do the best way to get better results on your value, there are solutions. Okay, which you could have tried, like for example, to be able to deal with change your data set from non-stationary to stationary data so that you really feel we use things like trend remote techniques, like maybe retraining, local retraining methods, or doing self-sampling for the data sets. I think you do that to some extent because you look at localized places. You could also use maybe anisotropic variables, which are actually allow spatial dependence. In this case for precipitation. So that your results are indeed speaking to the nature of data that you have. Okay? You could even increase it, but this is challenging, like increasing the spatial resolution. And the resolution is not bad really, but at least you have to give justification as to why you go for that. Why you go for that, or what you do to actually overcome the limitations. I wanted to finally, you see, that kind of discussion is also, you can also look at it from page 100. Okay? So in page 100, you have a figure which is looking at collinearity between in situ and satellite precipitation observations with a 10-kilometer radius. Okay? So, and the question was that why, first of all, for you to be able to do this type of thing, and you are looking at rainfall. Okay? So, but the question I have for you there, so that I know what to talk about, what is collinearity? You have it here in your table, figure 22, and you're looking at collinearity in situ and satellite precipitation. So what is collinearity? What does collinearity mean? Do you have an idea?
collinearity means is closely to the relation of variance values to our particular parameter.
Exactly. It's a relationship, that correlation between those two. And so, why do you think, like here we have high collinearity, and so it's really, why do you think collinearity is a big concern when it comes to this data set? So you are looking at really data set that you can compare it with the in situ. Okay, this is actually the graphs show high collinearity, isn't it? So, do you think it's a concern? That's something to worry about, or it's not? Yeah, because you first and foremost, when you're getting precipitation data, whether it's temperature, climate data, whether it's temperature or rainfall, the first thing you have to do is, especially when you're running statistics, you really want to make sure that you remove as much collinearity as possible. Otherwise, when you're running statistics, you will have issues. See? And so for you, I just present the fact that there's high collinearity, you know, it will be really, it's expected. It's expected. So it will really be interesting to remove highly correlated values, because rainfall is tricky. Rainfall has the seasons, but if you run it and it shows and the collinearity is like so high, then your stats will have issues. You cannot make a genuine basis. But the reason we already talked about the high collinearity is coming because of the rise from Masaka and rise from Mugono mixed together. So you get that. But I like this. I like this interesting bit. I know here you had your buffers, used 5 kilometers and 20. I'll skip that. But what is really interesting for all the data points, the correlations, they are not surprising. They are not surprising because the data that you use is. So on page, if you can look on page 142, for example, I noticed that you have beautiful maps there. 142, you have beautiful maps. There's no color scale, there's no like color ramp to show what the colors stand for. And so I don't know what this map is doing here, really. The same applies for 143, figure 67. Those figures are redundant. I mean, it doesn't have a scale, it's useless. You don't want it there. Same with figure 68. Yeah, and then for the purposes of conference presentations, Mr. Ivan, you realize that even these graphs of the districts on page 146, they were not observable on the slides. So we basically see a line. You see the name Guru and then the line. But you can clearly see that there are values here. There are values here. But the other shortcoming, the real shortcoming for these graphs here is that you see these graphs, if you look at the scale for this ratio, the NSR ratio, the scales are different. So if you just use a visual interpretation to explain and compare them, you will be completely off. See? Because the scales are different. You know what I'm saying? You are following? Yeah. These scales are different, and therefore having here on the same plate is misleading. It's not only misleading, but it's very wrong unless if you interpret them in a very careful way. Because all the scales are different for all of them, and so it's very hard to compare them, and this is the same throughout 146, 147. I like your discussion. I like your discussion, and I think I'll leave this for my friends to ask you. But I have one final question. I think I have it somewhere here. One final question. So, Ivan, tell us once again, what are the key theoretical contributions of your research to the field of geostatistics and spatial modeling? Again, put it both like you're talking to grandma. We don't want you to make our life better. your contribution? Has this work contributed anything?
Yes, the work has contributed something. I'm just recollecting my head out a bit of but in terms of theory, for example, take an example of what has long existed as Kepler's law, which is related to nearby things are more related than distant things. My research in work with the continuity of it plans to address that because that does not consider how near things are. When you use a three-time dimension, you're basically arguing that we say things are more related than past events as well when you're doing a 3D analysis. So that's part of it. But in terms of actual contributions to body of knowledge, in terms of validation, one I think I quantify and validate the transmitted data sets as an alternative estimate for rainfall. Then I also established the space-time graded data set, space-time cube geostatistical analysis as a model we can use to actually represent wet and dry conditions at a local scale. And then I also established where geostatistical algorithms work best in terms of prediction, so that we do not apply one algorithm throughout the study, but make it specific to a particular area at a local scale. And then I also contribute the 0.02 degree scale, which we can use to model as we go down in terms of scale modeling by districts. Yes.
And finally, as I hand over to the chairman, you know, nowadays we're talking about technology, right? So, learning, artificial intelligence, helping us to reconstruct some data sets, and then you run with them, and we have, before you know it, we have data. So I wanted you to comment a little bit on how you think the advances in satellite technology or computational methods will actually influence the future of spatial technology in your field on this field.
Thank you. We have, with the satellite data coming through, we have an increased seeking of we have increased supply of satellite data, and these are coming in large volumes. And they are increasingly becoming difficult for ordinary operators to handle. So I think in my field, we are coerced to develop one software as a service so that we are applied in space, but in terms of having the data accessible, we need to develop spatial analytical platforms. That means a person does not have to go through all this analysis. Once the algorithm is supplied with the data, someone should be able to go through a particular area, click and get the data behind that particular point when it's being driven by a machine without necessarily holding a computation unit. Also, it has a dimension of growth in terms of scale. Data is all important, but it's coming in at different scales. So there's need to look at scale analysis, where we're able to combine data even when it's from different scales, and also be able to combine it when it's from different sensors. That's not sensor. So I think in my field, the next step is to really explore scale, sensor-based analysis, and make that data available through spatial online analytical services.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much. Why don't we do Thank you. I'd like to thank Dr. Lumba for helping us digest and hopefully understand better what the work has been about. And interaction. Thank you.
First one I understand from you, Mr. Bamweyana. How do you define dry conditions? Because when I read this, are you defining dry days? Are you defining rainfall and very low rainfall? Are you defining floods or drought?
Yes, please repeat your question.
Yes, please repeat the question.
The question I was asking the candidates is, how do you define wet and dry conditions? Because when I look at the tests, sometimes you mention about talk about dry days or wet days. Are you defining extreme rainfall and very low rainfall, or floods and droughts? What do you actually mean by dry and wet conditions?
By dry and wet conditions, I mean deficit and surplus of precipitation.
Yes?
By wet and dry conditions, I mean the surplus and deficit of precipitation.
Maybe some define it as drought, some refine sphere for deafness, go to those around. So I want that definition. Yeah,
Could you repeat that, please?
Okay. Can I again?
Please come again. Hello?
Hello, am I in the room?
Yeah, we can hear you, but we didn't get that question.
Okay, let's go to the second question. The second question, you mentioned your work is differentiating adaptation of local scale. An example, how is this producing sedimentation? For example,
Dr. Alex, could you maybe type the question? It may be easier to read and answer because the communication is quite poor. Would that be okay? Okay, so as we wait for your questions to be typed, maybe we can come into the room here and then we shall revert to those questions. Somehow the group of questions is not coming through well. Okay. I don't know that should go to another Daniel or we go. Okay. Doctor.
is the connection in the room clear?
We were requesting requesting that you type the questions because somehow we are not hearing your questions properly. Is that okay, Dr. Nimsima? Okay, Dr. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to be part of this defense. When you were talking of the opponent to discuss and you think to move or to move in the direction of the discussing. So I'll also just try to make sure as I interact with Mr. Bamweyana, I try to make it as simple as possible, given the few minutes also given to me. The discussion has covered a very big ground on this, I think this defense, and I'm happy that a number of issues have been answered. So I'll just say, hint on a few. I may be able to mention the pages where they are or not, but generally, I have to thank Mr. Bamweyana for the good work. This is very important because we have a lot of challenges, especially with climate change. And I think our understanding of the wet and dry conditions, how they are spatial and temporally distributed, is very important. So thank you for being able to add a break to the knowledge that we have in this area. The discussants talked about the data sets, and I think I'll generally mention here that despite the good work, when it comes to the choice of the data set, I think CHAPS, the use of CHAPS as the data set for this work seemed to influence a lot the kind of results that we have. And I will not spend a lot of time going through the high R square that we are getting when you try to compare the in-situ data with the what we are calling the predicted satellite data set, because they are really correlated, and that's why you see those high R squared values. So I'm not going to that, and it is expected. Most of those results are expected. So, I'll also bring in something new, and more from the practical point of view. You are talking of scale, and you are talking about local scale. What is local scale? What is the understanding of local scale in this case? What is it referring to?
So in that study, local scale refers to that spatial unit analysis that is representative first of an area, administrative area within the country, for example, a village, but it's also a depth or skill in modeling wet and dry conditions.
Okay, now, in reading your work, I get to see you, and you mentioned now, you bring in the concept of administrative units. Now you are looking at two things. You are taking the geological perspective, talking about the wet and dry conditions, that is climate, and you are going on what I would call political administrative things. How would you link those two? Is it very appropriate for you to describe meteorological variables using administrative units? What is their view?
Sorry, I keep looking around for me. But yes, metrological parameters happen independently, like administrative units. That is true. However, it's within administrative boundaries that policies that affect meteorological conditions are implemented. It is very good to develop very skillful models, but they must be also represented. Consider an example of funding like the parish development model. Within it, it has climate parameters, so it's hard to differentiate them. If you look at national communications on climate, they fall within the boundaries that are political. So whereas it's not the major area, it's indicative. And so it's mentioned as a representative factor.
Yes, because when you even talk of, it may not be the parish development model per se, but when you look at some of the development models that we've pursued here in this country, we've even talked of zoning. And if you look at it, it goes beyond what you are calling a village or parish, and it goes beyond that. So to me, I would think it would be important that you don't also lose the more of a landscape approach, and it becomes very critical for us to be able to understand in that scale. Because if you, one of the things that you are mentioning in your book, I think it's one of the recommendations, is that we should even be able to model this at household level. Is that feasible? You would think we need to model whether somebody should be able to grow beans at household level. You said this one is should grow beans here, the other should grow cassava at that level, using meteorological conditions. Do you think that should be the direction we should take?
That recommendation was guided by what is happening elsewhere. Climate insurance.
Yes.
If you look at, for example, the most expensive disaster that has happened, hurricane, I think it happened in California, I forgot the actual name, but it cost about $65 million. And of that, only 28 million was insured. Of that 68, sorry, of the $68 million, only 28 was insured, as the houses were broken down. When the analysis came down was that people did not have information about climate household level, and so they would not take on concepts like climate proofing, climate insurance, or crop insurance. And so when these disasters happen, people have not proved their work. And so whereas they are moving towards that household level, here it's still a difficulty at policy level, but it's something that can be considered for future research.
Okay, thank you. Now, I get your reason there. Do you think there are other factors that are considered for such a recommendation?
There are other factors.
Yeah, that will be put into consideration.
To use households.
To go to the household level.
Yes, most of our farmers are smallholder farmers, and we lose about 800,000 hectares per year, and most of these come from household level. So I think the loss of crop yield, most people are smallholder farmers. So I think we can take it to our household level. Given that the Act now, the 2021 Act, even allows for such ordinances at lower levels.
Okay, I would think in this case, one of the things that we consider is the value of what you want to protect. Okay? Because realistically in our situation, even before we get to the district, because you also say scale is still a problem. I think it comes out right now. Scale is still a problem. So even before we define accurately something something that can work, if I borrow your words, at say district level, then we want also to come to household level. I think maybe we may be buying more than we can show. So we need to consider the value of the property and then make sure that this recommendation can make is actually feasible. Otherwise it will remain redundant, or like we say, it remains in the book, but it can't be implemented. That's why I said I was taking a more practical approach. Now you talked of, I'm not going to get it, but you talked of you looked at 1981 to 2020, that is the temporal scope you had about the year. Are there any specific reason for that?
Yes, I know that the World Meteorological Authority recommends that for analysis of climate, we should be looking at more than 30 years.
Okay.
Whereas it does not specify the limit, but it should be more than 30 years.
Thank you. I looked at, my colleague talked about the conceptual model. Now, the conceptual model I saw, which I think were different from what you had there. It had arrows where the independent variables were dependent on the dependent variables, and the dependent variables seemed to be dependent on the independent variables, with a number of intermediate or intervening variables. What is it that you really wanted to bring up? Why is it that with the dependent and the independent, why did you present it that way, with the arrows in both directions?
Yes, I admit that was an error in the book, but I tried to correct it here in the presentation. I think that's why I saw it as different. Yes, but I've taken it into consideration.
Okay. I think around page 70, I think you can see how fast I'm moving. Around page 70, you talk of the 5, 10, and 20 kilometer buffers over those 3-inch measurements. And I'm wondering, would it have been 5, 7, and 8? What informed the choice of those?
One is a study by Geomatics in 2020 that informed this, and the idea was that distance, the significance of the range decreases with distance, and he used similar distances to understand the derivation, as some other scholars had debated that interpolation would actually be a sufficient replacement other than a really data set. And so I adopted the same distance because they are previously researched. Also that the relay data set I was using was having similar increments in terms of distance.
I've loved to see what would have happened if we had even maybe 3 kilometers, but now you are talking also of the fact, I think the limitation associated with the data set that we're using. Now, I happen to be the vice chairperson of the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences Research Ethics Committee. And one of the sections on page 3, on page 93 in the book, is a concept. And I seem not to understand that. What is it that you presented there? Can you explain it and also tell us if what is there is enough? Page 93. That's sufficient. What is it, concept? What is it about?
Here I was drawing your attention to the fact that data that is not mined has been cited or acknowledged, and that the redistribution of the work that is not mined within this study is not permitted to leave. And also that stakeholders have acknowledged personal information where to include in this.
there is more to the concept than what you are presenting there. I think you need to be able to provide that section as well. Because otherwise, just mention the people cited. Of course, we are dealing anti-plagiarism with the choir, but that's not all. Okay? So we need, I think that section really needs to be also worked on. I think I have taken, I think here, okay, I think the R squared, I've already mentioned that in the general results that the general comments that the results we see are really as expected, and that is because especially the fact that you are validating data sets, that the results you are getting between the comparison of illicit data with the brilliant data set, the CHAPS data set, that correlation is really expected because of the way CHAPS data set is done and is prepared. Now, I'll look at, I've also looked at the presentation of results. My colleague talked about the maps. Because one of the main, I noticed that your main results are presented in form of maps. And in addition to the comments made, them not being legible, the cartographic skills, at this level, if you present maps in your book, some in miles, when you look at the scale, you are using miles. Like on page, figure 49, just look at figure 49 and figure 50. You are using miles, you are using kilometers. Was it intended to confuse us?
I think that was otherwise.
Surely, I hardly see maps these days. Unless when you are a product of the US system, I hardly see maps here where people use miles. You are reasonably whether using meters or kilometers, So I think it is something I saw. Now, I will, in the interest of time, of course, I've already talked about the issue of scale, looking at the 0.05 degrees by 0.05, which is the scale we are recommending, and then going down and say maybe we could also go to the 0.02. I think that is something where we need really more information, need to justify a number of those. And then the other one, when I go to the conclusions, I think, I see conclusion recommendation somewhere. One of the things you are telling us you contributed to is the improvement of this geostatistic approach, which is good. But when I read, I was very impressed that, we now have a method or an approach for us to do modeling of wet and dry conditions at the local scale. But now you are saying this is it had a very high computational cost. So what should we do?
It's true that the model still has a computational cost. Whereas I minimized the computational cost to the algorithms. It still has a computational cost to it. So I did not want to eliminate the idea that people are not going to find a cost of computation. But the idea that, yes, whereas the approach exists, you still encounter a computational cost. My intention was not to contradict myself. My intention was to say that we still encounter computational cost because of the volume of the data involved.
So what is the now? What should we do? We, like my friend here, talking about the people in the villages or wherever. What can we use this? Can we use it?
Yes, we can use it.
Under what conditions?
Under the conditions now that you have Google, but research being continuous, I'm working on making it an online application so people stop bearing the cost of computation, so that if you can enable data to come in, you can get a result without bearing that cost.
Okay. My second last comment or question. On page 162, around 162, 163, I think that's where you mentioned that this relay data set is indeed a good alternative for us to use instead of deep sea measurements. But we also again emphasizing the issue of validation. Why is it so? And would it be that you need to know that this data is already validated to some level? Because the data set you use is validated. That's why it's a blend of the two. Okay? Now, you are telling us we should go through validation again. I'm wondering, is it something that we need to be able to do? Why is it so?
It is so because this is not the only relay data set that exists. My idea here is to inform the reader, don't just take away the idea of the data set. Even when you look at CHAPS, in areas like the Arizona region, it has components of underestimation. So if you don't validate in that area and reinforce with other industry data sets within that area, you may miss the point. So it's always important, whereas you may not do it exclusively as the exercise, but as pre-data analysis, it's important to note the quantities of debits you're dealing with before you go for it, because CHAPS relay data also has limitation. For example, it does not account for rain that comes from a warm cloud, because it uses a cold cloud index. So it's important to validate within even smaller regions so you can do those bias corrections.
I'm thinking that maybe this would have come up because we also, in one way or the other, may have missed out the other fact that it is like a blended data set. So you need to be able to do something about it. Finally, on page, I think page 162, out of this work we have some applications. I don't know, like your notes. I didn't understand one of those applications. Can you look at it in that book? The one of the first one of Bamweyana. What referencing style is that?
They are all Bamweyana. The first one, CHAPS relay data set.
Evaluation.
Evaluation of CHAPS relay data set.
Can you read it? What referencing style is that?
I think it's APA.
That's how it is written. That's how it's done. Are you sure? How many authors do you have there?
Okay. I see.
Okay. So I'll stop at that. Thank you very much, Chair. I think to me, I've been able to get my responses in relation to this work, in addition to what you have been able to ask. Thank you very much.
Well survived with the Daniels. So let us now go back to Alex. He has a number of questions, so your responses are
that if this data is applied, for example, projected into crops at a local scale, and you can be able to make adaptation measures and mitigation measures by understanding the data we have here. If it's misrepresented statement, I'll trace it.
Okay. In the problem statement, you mentioned that modeling of dry and wet conditions has been based on global and regional approaches which cannot be used for appropriate decision-making at local levels. Based on this statement, what do you say, for example, about the teleconnections such as ENSO and IOD influence on Uganda's rainfall regime?
Yes, indeed, when these factors come into the influences of rainfall, they form what we call teleconnections. There's a group of scholars that argue that global scale and regional scale is valid, which in any case it is, because it is influenced by bigger forces or bigger drivers like IOD, and they need to make interpretation of how far, for example, the Indian Ocean airport affects a particular place. So that argument is valid. However, it does not eliminate the fact that we still need to make an interpretation of what exactly happens at a local scale.
On page 96, why did you analyze annual rainfall as average monthly rainfall instead of total annual rainfall?
I think that was an oversight.
Okay. The SPI3 already has the different categories of wetness or dryness, positive values showing wet conditions and negative values showing dry conditions. How did you use these thresholds in your study?
The thresholds were not used independently, but they were analyzed cumulatively to derive trends.
In your results for objective 1, you compared CHAPS data with observation data from 10 stations. In the table 1 on page 26, you already mentioned that CHAPS data includes gauge data. Therefore, you are comparing CHAPS data with its subset. In results for objective 3, you mentioned that Lake Victoria Basin is expected to be extremely busy. This is the same question. In the results for objective 3, you mentioned that Lake Victoria Basin is expected to have extreme wet conditions. At what scale are these conditions, i.e. daily, monthly, seasonal, or annual?
They are annual. That was our prediction for 2025.
Okay. The candidate should explain the implications of the forecast model algorithms for forest-based, exponential smoothing, and curve fitting. Where are these models doing best and why?
That is valid. Like I said earlier, that these models are dependent on the nature of variability. For example, the forest-based algorithm works based on localities that experience complex variability. That means at one time they are high, and the other time they are low with no particular trend attached to them. Now when you look at, for example, the exponential smoothing, it looks at localities that experience changes gradually and steadily in any particular direction. That means they may be going low and upwards, however they are following a particular direction. When you look at mean, the orientation of the trend is around the mean, and so you can use the mean model to make the forecast. So the idea is slightly dependent on the nature of variability at any point.
Lastly, how does your study contribute to Uganda's NDC, as you mentioned in your justification?
I'm sure of that NDP, but I'm not so sure of NDC. But my contribution is largely the ability to communicate climate on a local scale actually goes out to countries to communicate what is happening at a local scale. So with the ability to generate data-driven models at a local scale, then my study makes that contribution as part of it.
Okay, thank you. We have progressed through these questions and get to the time. So Dr. Nisima, I hope the candidate has adequately answered the questions. We now come to Dr. John Richard Otke. I hope we have finished all the difficult questions and we're now the very simple ones. Yeah, the next 10 minutes are yours. And yeah, over to you.
I agree, I spent less than 10 minutes in my house. Although I prepared for about 30 minutes. But I'm going to make general comments and then maybe some 2 or 3 specific questions. Generally, I think the work is good and it's much needed, especially for farmers like us who have experienced also quite a lot of natural disasters in the farming. I think it's a good topic, and yes, I'm trying to go through the rigor of a PhD candidate. I thank you for this. I want to start with the easiest ones. And yes, some questions have already been asked. I don't need to repeat them. Comment 1 is lack of consistency in your write-up. If you go, for example, to table of content and also list of figures, somewhere you put full body, then there is space, then I think you need to look into that. And then also try to reconcile that. And then the other one, the use of initial calculators. I don't know what happened to Ralph, whether that was your format of writing, but I think in some areas not necessary to use initial calculators. But even if you do that, you find a situation where wet is written with a calculator and another wet with this calculator, which also lack of consistency. Referencing, also try as much as possible to use standard referencing. Somewhere you say according to, then comma, sometimes according to everything is in brackets, which is not normal. So you need to try to check on your referencing. Yes, I think the